Hello class, this is Mr. Wise. I just have a quick video to show you the first level of retouching here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to retouchingacademylab.com. You can search for Retouching Academy Raw, and this will give you some high quality raw files to work with. Now I'll be putting these on Classroom for you most likely, but this is where I'm getting them from. Remember, a RAW file has a lot more data than a JPEG, and it's not compressed. So in this case, I am going to double click these and look through until I find something I like. And what I'm looking for is a lot of heavy pores here or blemishes. Preferably something a little bit closer up. Okay, this one right here is perfect. And we'll be getting a high quality image. So because this is raw, we'll have a lot more things we can do to it initially. Okay, I can see this right here, DSC 9088. I'll go to Photoshop here and do File, Open. Now it's in my downloads. Now keep in mind I'm working on a PC at home. So what I do with Control, you would do with the Command key. But I'll try and mention Mac specific keyboard shortcuts. Okay, I have a second monitor, so I just have to move this over here. Now usually you would not see this if you were opening a normal file, but because this is a raw file, we get some extended things we can do with it. We can control the exposure, the contrast, highlights and shadows. Now what I'm looking for is a good dynamic range. So remember, we don't want any clipping, and these will show you if something's clipping in the highlights or the shadows. So right now we can see the red color for clipping in the highlights and the black or the blue color for clipping in shadows. These are just indicators you can turn off or on. Now my color temp. Okay, so as far as color correction, we can kind of look at a wider neutral value here and see if it needs a little something. We want to keep a warm skin tone, natural. Anything that's white or a neutral gray should remain neutral. We can also kind of use this guide up here. Now we have other tools here that we can use to, for instance, desaturate a certain color. Like if we think this orange is too orange in the skin, we can go to that and saturation. We can bring out reds, purples, whatever we need. So basically this is basic camera settings. You can go black and white, choose a different color profile, which we'll talk about more about later. We can try and see what lighting situation this might be shot under and let it kind of use a preset here if we want. Like say we knew it was shot under cloudy light. Tungsten's really yellow. Fluorescents are kind of like what we have in our room, but obviously that's way too much blue. I want realistic skin tones here. We have our sharpening and noise reduction. So if you had a lot of ISO noise, you could try and take care of that here, or if the picture needed edge sharpening, this is pretty crisp. Tones, if you remember curves from Photoshop, this is going to handle kind of the overall lightness and darkness. It's just a way to use a graph to do some of the same things you would do here. Now, I want a good dynamic range, so dark darks and light lights. And I can use this to assist me. Now, right in here, that pupil, and in there is still a nice dark. So I want to lighten up and bring out some detail in the eye here. I don't want to necessarily have a ton of bright highlight here though. Now this texture is going to blur some of that, but notice we lose details, so this isn't the method we're going to use to reduce blemishes. On this, I might want to turn down the vibrance a little bit because it's pretty bright as far as the colors. Remember that vibrance is going to attempt to change every color except skin tone, and saturation changes everything including skin tone. Now I want to reduce this highlight a little bit, so taking highlights down all the way might pay off, but I'll leave this up to you. You don't have to match my settings exactly. You can also try auto on these. It's not always successful. Now masking, when you're sharpening, anything that's white will be sharpened. And a hint you can use in both Lightroom and in here is to hold down Alt and move this, and it shows you a mask in black and white. So right now, I'd only be sharpening like some of these edges around the eyelashes and eyebrows and stuff. I don't want sharpening in general skin tone because it sharpens blemishes. Now this would be for if we have issues with the lens, like if it has color issues or fringing, red or green fringing. A lot of lenses have built-in corrections that right along with them in the raw file, like metadata. We could turn that on if we wanted. I'm not sure what lens this was shot with, Tamron. So just like a lot of the other stuff with the raw file, all the information about the shot, including the lens, rides along with the file. We're not going to be using any special effects right now. We don't need to calibrate currently. We have presets here, and you can set several different versions of these settings with snapshots. We also have some basic tools up here, red eye reduction and stuff like that. White balance. Let's try this white balance tool real quick. So that's where it thinks the appropriate white balance should be, and I agree with that. You can also sample colors to see some color data, red, green, and blue, and that's out of 255 for each channel. We can target specific areas with hue saturation, etc. We can crop, straighten, do perspective changes, spot removal, but we're not going to use this one now. Red eye removal, adjustment brushes like in Lightroom, graduated filters and radial filters like in Lightroom Develop. I'm going to go ahead and say this is okay. So now open image will open it in the normal Photoshop, like you would see if you just opened a JPEG. Okay, we are going to cover over the next couple days here different ways to retouch. So let's start with some basics. Command on your computers. Command 0 will resize to fit window. Command minus will zoom out. Command plus will zoom in. I use Command 0 a lot. We want to get the right tools over here. Now, even if you're in a different workspace, you can still find tools in here, but it's a hassle if they're not up here. So the first thing we all want to do is be on the same workspace of photography. That changes a few things here, including our tools. Okay, so when we're in the initial and easiest phase of doing this type of retouching, we're going to be working more with pre-built tools. And the issue with these is that they tend to blur skin and lose texture, so that's why they're not the best method. But they're the easiest to get started with. Now I have a padlock here. Every time you start a new layer or open an image, the first layer is locked. I can double click it and just hit enter. The dialog that pops up you can't see here. I'll bring it over, but I just hit enter. So it's unlocked. Okay, the first tool we have here is the spot healing brush. So if you make this slightly larger than a blemish, it is going to look at what's around it and try and fix it. Now I am using a pen tablet right now, but you could do this with a mouse as well. I just like being able to touch the screen and tell it where I want this to happen. So you can increase your brush size with the square right bracket on the key, which is by enter, and the square left bracket will lower the brush size. So on this, I just want to kind of go like that. You don't want to hold down too long. So this is, uses pressure for size. If you're using a pen, you might want that. We've got different modes we can use for this too. Sample all layers is going to sample all the layers. Just a second, I'm going to save this. just because I have a feeling my Photoshop is glitching out a little bit right now. So if that happens, you want to start by resetting it. The second thing you can do if that doesn't fix it is you can hold Command, Option, Control all at the same time and then click this to open it and keep holding it, and it'll reset the preferences. That's the second step usually you take. If resetting it doesn't work. If nothing else, just reset your computer. Okay, let's see if this works a little better for us. There it goes. You can just tap for a small area or draw a small section, but keep in mind it pulls from the texture around it. So if there's bad texture around it, it might not get super great texture. Now we have a lot of highlights here, and there's a sort of advanced trick you can do called blend if. If I duplicate this layer here, I did Command J to duplicate it. I'm going to do it curves and take down the highlights a lot. There's several ways to do this, but let's see. We're looking for kind of neutral tone here that is not white, sort of in the basic skin color. We want it to only affect the layer right below it. I'm going to do Command E to merge those two together. Now, if we double click this right here, not on the name, but here, we should get this. Now, if you alt click this, you can get this thing that only blends it if it fits certain qualifications. So I option clicked each of these to split them apart. Okay, the other thing I can do is look at the underline layer, not this layer, and tell it, hey, if it's like super bright, I want it to blend through. So I'm going to alt click this. Actually, I think there's an easier way to do this. Okay, so let's hit Control J on this. So I'm making a duplicate. I'm going to use the mask tool to select a bunch of these kind of really light areas and pull it to a place with a kind of more normal texture. Try not to get too close to the edge like I did. So we don't want that big highlight there if we can help it. So the mouse tool, I draw a selection around this and drag it to an area that's kind of clean or not too highlighty. I don't mind the highlight on the lips so much. Here it's kind of up to you. We can get something close, but that one's kind of tough because of the color. Okay, now this doesn't look super great, but the reason we're doing this is because we can double click it, hold Alt, and click on this. Holding Alt will split these in two. So this, moving this up here and splitting these two on the underline layer, helps us say that this skin color layer should show through if it's in this highlight range, and that just takes a little experimentation to figure out where it should go. You can also do it up here. It's going to be split and help you kind of dial it in. Oops, I need to alt click that. I'll show you more about how to do this later, kind of a better approach on the second or third day, but we'll hit OK for now. Now if you want to merge these, you can. By merging down, that'll just make it one solid layer. Okay, now we get to work. So back to this tool. So we're just going to be going through, clicking and selecting a bunch of these. Now this is a good time to listen to music if you were, doing this all day, every day. This part can be kind of tedious, but this is part of why high-end retouchers make more money than your normal point-and-shoot soccer mom who might not know much about editing. Or any amateur is grab this and just start blurring big areas. Oops. Or smoothing them, like go to filter, blur, and do like a Gaussian blur. They tend to do it through blur, and it kind of just gets rid of all your skin tone. It doesn't look natural. And then start using that to grab sections like this. Okay, so we're avoiding doing that. Now there are some tricks you can use to speed up your workflow. bring it across the window here real quick. So there's things like a red facial scrub in Photoshop, or use the channels. This allows to do some of the work for you. So here's one from Tutorial Bucket. If you put in red facial scrub photo and look for that lady, you should be able to find it.
And polish skin so it looks perfect as you'd see it in a magazine makeup layout, or just to slightly correct the most obvious flaws and blemishes in skin tone. So it's very flexible. Now channel, and in the going to the red channel because of this channels palette here, and I go to the red channel. Very flexible. Correct the most obvious flaws in makeup layout, or just to... Now to do this, we need to have here, and I go to the red channel. Now I'm going to the red channel because of this. Look at that skin, not a single mark or blemish on it. That's because most of the are going to use this red channel as the... So we go to select all, and then edit, copy. Okay, turn back on RGB, go back to layers, and then edit, paste. Okay, we've now placed in our black and white copy of the red layer. Now the trick here is we have to change the blending mode from normal to luminosity, which you'll find at the bottom of the mode list. Now it begins to make some sense. We get some pretty wild looking skin here, but what we now need to do is to restore some of the detail. So we do this by going back to our channels palette, and this time we're going to create what's called a luminosity mask. This is a bit of a hidden feature. With a PC, you hold down your control key. If you're using a Mac, you'll be holding down your command key, and then click on the RGB thumbnail. This takes a selection of the lumen, holding down your command key, and then click on the RGB thumbnail.
Okay, so basically that quick little hint there is to Control J just to make a copy, go to its channels, go to red, because red has the least amount of blemishes in it usually. You can see that green has more, and blue also has more. So we're gonna go, go over here, we want to have on just red. Oh yeah, I forgot to do select all. And then edit, copy, turn these all back on, go here, and then do edit, and then paste, and you get this black and white. You change it to luminosity. Now it's going to get a little light, so what he does is he goes back here, he holds command, and clicks, and then you get this selection where you can go back and do like a mask with it with this. Okay, so the mask is basically using that black and white info to knock out some of these darks. So there's a few things that can help speed that along. But for now, the main thing I want you to get is how these tools work. So real quick, let's jump back to this. Let's see, I'm going to see how much difference this makes. Okay, so our other tools here, we've got this where we can just point and click or draw areas. The other thing we have in our arsenal is this, the healing brush. Healing brush needs you to hold Alt and click an area of clean skin, and it will pull from that spot. So I'm just going to increase my brush size a little bit. Okay. So it should be pulling from over here. See down here, you can see where it's actually pulling from. So you're manually setting the point it pulls from with Alt. Now you have to watch out though, because say you start here and you start dragging over, notice the crosshair is going to cross into the purple up there. So you have to kind of sell a lot of points. Then back to this mask here, I already showed you this a bit, but for larger areas you draw a selection and drag it to an area that's a bit more clear. And it's going to try to fade in the edges and make it look good, but you can see it's adding quite a bit of blur, so you have to be careful. Now I'm hitting Command D to get rid of those selections. The other option is just to draw a new selection. So like if I hit this, go over, drag it to this, and then want to draw here, I can just draw here. But if you don't want to drag another area, you can hit Command D just to get rid of that selection without actually making a new one. Now for this, you'll probably want to be zooming in a lot. So don't forget Control plus, Control minus to zoom in and out. Or you can hit Z and click to drag in, or Z and Option to click out. Also, you can hold Z and drag in or out. So that one's super handy. Okay, so main tools I want you to focus on today are these three here. Our healing brush, let's see, so I'm trying to get these pop-up spot healing, and patch tool. Now these do have different modes you can experiment with too. Source and destination will switch. So right now with the mask I'm grabbing here, then dragging to here, but you can reverse it where you select here and then it brings that spot over. I like it the first way better though. We can choose content aware, which supposedly will pay attention to the content and try and match it up better. I haven't had great results with it, but it kind of depends on what you're doing. But I like it the old-fashioned way. Command Z, of course, to undo. Okay, so what I want you to do is get this picture looking as good as you can in the time you have class tomorrow. Then the second day we'll be learning a different method to do it. So you have your 2-hour blocks to work on this. Email me with any questions in the meantime. The other thing you can do here, if you want to experiment with the contrast more or anything else, hit this guy down here in the lower right, and you can do things like curves to further change your lights and darks. Now don't forget, you can click this button with the little hand, and that lets you actually go to an area, click, and drag up to lighten that particular area, or darken it. That can be really handy for isolating certain areas in the picture. So you want to work on using all the things you've learned in Photoshop so far to make this look as good as possible. Now also we have things like these little hairs up here. So in a professional retouching environment, they would be getting rid of all these too. Oops, I'm on that layer there. Stuff like that. So you want to focus on beauty retouching here. Now, in the political sense, there's a lot of talk about we shouldn't rely so much on photoshopping people and leave them more natural. And I definitely agree with that, or a lot of that politically, but you have to keep in mind the client is always going to have an idea of how they want things done, and you want to know how to do it. So you need to master all the skills, even if you might personally think things should be done a little bit differently. So just understand it's no critique of body positivity or anything like that, but just an essential skill for Photoshop. Alright, when you are done, you can save this. So I will do File, Save As. You're going to send this to me in the normal Photoshop format, so you can just leave that as is. I'm going to double click the name here. I'll just select it there. And I'll put my name, _ retouch 1, and then save it. That's what you'll be sending to me so I can see all your layers in your workflow. Alright, good luck. I will be back in a couple days, so email me any questions in the meantime, and I can clear up anything that you kind of need me looking over your shoulder to see when I come back. But we'll be moving on to the next method tomorrow. And then Wednesday, we get to something called frequency retouching, which is kind of like the granddaddy of all the styles. The most micromanaged, but also realistic. All right, good luck, class.